Hello, everybody. Welcome to the pre-show. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Chan's Logic, episode 52. 51 was last week. This week is 52. I got myself here. Steph is not here at the moment. She's just going to hang out, and I'm going to do this one by myself, so it should be exciting. I really got to start the audio software real quick, and then we'll be set for success. All right, so in this episode, in Chan's Logic, episode 52, what I wanted to talk about was basically the 3-stage hiring process that I use to bring people on and some of the fun journeys that I've had recently trying to hire new people. I've been trying to bring someone on for a position of basically a digital marketing manager, trying to get someone who can sit in front of a computer and watch what we do and try to make sense of some numbers and make sure that campaigns are running right and correctly. And so the way I started putting the word out for this hiring process was I just made a description of exactly what I needed. And then I put it out on Indeed.com and a couple other different employment websites, got about 1 million applications. So step one that I think people should focus on in this is, number one, just take what I wrote that I need and rewrite it on your cover letter and make sure those points are hitting your application. Otherwise, you just kind of wasted your time putting something in when it doesn't make any sense. If I'm looking for a digital marketer and you're a mechanical engineer and you don't have the experience, or yeah, it's cool that you have that experience, but it's not what I'm looking for. So I'm not going to be the one to bring you on because it doesn't make sense for me and it does not fit my needs as an employer. And so that's your basically your initial stage is just make sure you're a good fit for the position. And even if you're not a good fit, make sure your application looks like you are a good fit. If you can't play the part, at least fake the part to get the part that you want. And so what I go into for my first stage of hiring then is I take everybody who's qualified and everybody who's put themselves in a position to where at least their experience matches what I need mostly. And I'll take people who specifically match, and then I'll take people who maybe kind of match as well, but probably not. And I'll take them just because I want to see what they've got and what they're working with. Maybe the application was just off or different, or maybe they have better things to say in person. And so the first stage is where I invite everybody on for basically a video interview. We sit on a conference call like this, except not, obviously we don't do it on Facebook Live. That'd be weird. We do it via GoToMeeting or Zoom meeting software. And I ask them a few questions. First, I get to know them. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you come about this, looking for this kind of career? How did you get into what you're doing? And what made you really enjoy what we're doing? Then after that, I'll ask them, okay, tell me something that you did well in your last position. What's the one thing you can remember that went really well? And then the second question is, okay, now tell me a situation where one thing went horribly wrong and how you fixed it. And for most people, they don't want to admit that they've done something wrong. And speaking from the person who's looking to hire people's point of view, I know we've all screwed things up and I know it's okay that we've screwed things up, but I want to see how you reacted and responded to the situation and how you cleaned it up. So if the response is, I don't mess things up, then I know you're not really telling the whole truth. If the response is, oh, let me tell you about the time when I screwed everything up and then I turned the whole thing around and made it great, that's what I'm looking for. I want to know specifically, and I want to know the real true story behind what you're saying and what you did. Then once we get through with that question, I ask them a couple of questions. Okay, what's your biggest strength in this realm? What makes you the person who should be picked for this position? What makes you special? And we talk about that, and it's a little bit of self-awareness. So what makes me special? Why am I strong in this area? And what should I be the one to get picked for this? Then I counter that with another question of, okay, now what's your biggest weakness in this position? What is the one thing you struggle with when looking at this? And so in terms of the digital marketing position, what do you struggle with when trying to do any sort of digital paid advertising, any of that stuff? What's your biggest struggle? What's the one thing you suck at? And if someone can tell me one thing that they actually aren't good at and one thing that they know they struggle with, that's self-awareness. And that's something that's a really strong characteristic for me, because it tells me that you know yourself, you know what you're good at, then you counter and you know what you're not good at, which gives me two aspects to you. It tells me that you're real and you're capable of coming up with exactly what I need to know on the fly. And it tells me that you understand who you are and you understand your strengths and you understand your weaknesses. So you understand how you can build upon both of those things. And when you're in the process, it's really good to know and understand that and to be real with it and not beat around the bush with questions like, oh, I haven't screwed anything up, or, oh, this didn't happen. Or it's just, tell me, even if you have to dig real deep, take a couple seconds. And this is another thing in the interview process for the person being interviewed. Take a few seconds to formulate the opinion. You don't need to say something right off the bat. It doesn't need to be like, boom, done, out. It can be, okay, give me 30 seconds, give me 20 seconds. I'm going to think on this. I'm going to formulate a good answer, which is better than just blurting something out. But if you're like me, you can formulate an opinion quickly and start talking quickly, but not everybody can do that. So make sure that you're in a position to be able to do that if you are. And if not, take a couple seconds, take 30 seconds to think about it. It's perfectly fine and it's perfectly okay to take your time when you're trying to formulate answers and ideas. And so then the last question I ask, and this first stage of interviewing is 20 minutes max. I don't want to sit there for a long time. I want to get to know you a little bit, and I want to understand the way you think and how you think. And so the last question, I always throw people a little bit of a curveball, because I want to see if you can formulate an answer to a question quickly and creatively, and how interesting the concept you come up with comes out and what it is, and if it makes sense or not. And so the last question I ask is usually something like, okay, describe the color yellow to me. If I've never seen the color, how would it feel? What is it? How would I know about it if I couldn't see it? And so the ideas and the creative solutions formulated from that tell me how quickly we can think and how quickly we can formulate ideas and solutions to problems on the fly, which is incredibly important when I'm looking for someone to interview for a position that needs that analytical mindset and that mindset of being able to think and quick and act creatively and quickly, which are both incredibly important options when looking for this kind of a position. So then once they pass that, I'll usually tell them, hey, great job. You had a good interview, and here's what we're doing next. Here's how the process works. And here's when you're invited for the next piece. And here's what the next piece looks like. Then here's what the final piece looks like. But before I move to the second piece, and before we get off this first call, we give them a little bit of an exercise. So go look at 3 different sites, or go look at 3 different avenues or platforms, or whatever I'm doing. Go do 3 different things and bring me back a one-sheeter within 3 days. Send me a one-sheeter of how you would work this, how this process would work, and how you would organize it. And I tell them, you don't have to get crazy and you don't have to get tactical at this point. Just give me a one-sheeter and a high-level overview of how this would work. And so basically, the way they write that is their ticket to the next stage in the interviews, and how well it is and how nicely formulated it is and how much it coincides with what I need is going to directly impact the ability to get invited to the second stage of the hiring process. And so when they turn that in, we obviously review that. But before we get off this call, because this isn't due for a couple of days, usually I give them 3 or 4 days, I tell them, okay, hey, thanks for being part of this. Thanks for answering all the questions. If you have any questions in the meantime or want to check in, feel free to talk to me. And then we hang up the call. They usually turn the thing in. If they don't turn it in, they're obviously probably never going to get invited to the second piece because they didn't meet a deadline, their first deadline. And so when we get into the second piece of the interview, what I do usually is we'll look at all the candidates. I write notes on every single one on the first phase that I talk to. So notes about all of them, notes about what I liked, notes about what I noticed, notes about what they did, how they reacted, responded, moved, and did all that stuff. And then we take the top ones and we invite them to the second stage of the interview. And so the second stage is basically, now we're going to talk me through the one-sheeter. Why did you make the decisions here? What were the parameters here? What would happen if this didn't work? What would happen if this didn't work? What would happen if this didn't work? And so we work through it together. We work through their problem solving skills, and we get an understanding of how they think and how they act and how they work and move through things creatively. So how does this work? Okay, cool. Talk me through it. Okay, wait, stop there. What if this happened? And what if this happened? What if this whole thing fell apart? What would you do? What's your plan B? And so we work through that creatively and constructively, and you can see how well they're able to work through problems, how well they're able to stop and explain what they're doing, and how well they're able to formulate new opinions based on the questions that we ask. And so when we have those steps to the problems and steps to those solutions that they're working through, and when we're able to throw them curveballs, this is real-time feedback and creative thinking that we're getting out of them. And so I'm really going to know and understand what's the frustration point, what's the point where they're comfortable, how are they moving, did they get back, did they cross their arms, did they formulate great ideas, was one of them kind of off, but they still formulated a pretty good idea. And so this second stage really gives me a good idea of how well they're going to think and act and work creatively on the fly and solve problems. And in addition to that, work with people who are going to ask questions and who are going to work with them and manage them a little bit. So it really gives you a good insight into the person. And this can be an exercise for the digital marketing stuff. It can be an exercise if you're a coach in a gym. You can work them through situations. Okay, so I had this person, they pulled their hamstring. What do you do next? Oh, they can't do that. What do you do? Okay, how do you do this? And what if this happens? What if they can't do this? And so you work through a lot of problems and solutions creatively with them. And then at the end of this second stage of the interview, we'll take that and we will tell them, okay, now we're going to talk about how we move forward. Here's what we're past the elephant stage. So the elephant stage is when I bring them on initially in the first one, and we talk about the sunshine and gumdrops and where they can get and how exciting it's going to be, and then ask them all those questions. Then the stage 2 is, okay, now this is after we get through all this creative thinking and all of that. It's okay. This is what's required of you. This is what's not required of you. This is where your responsibilities lie. This is how much work we're going to put into this thing. And this is where I'm at. This is where you're at. This is how we're going to communicate. And these are the processes that it looks like. Are you comfortable and okay with how this works and how this is structured and functions? So you need to get the elephant mindset, which is the very quick thinking, irrational mindset, out of the way and start talking to the writer here. So can you handle this workload? Does this make sense? Are you okay with this? Once the euphoria wears away, are you still going to enjoy this? And are you still going to be happy doing this? Because you need to make sure that you're vetting people out enough to where they're in a position to where they're making a rational decision and they're not making a sunshine and gumdrops decision. You see this in gyms a lot. People make a decision that they want to be a coach forever because it's sunshine and gumdrops and happiness. And then when it gets difficult, they cut out and they leave, or they get mad and angry and frustrated. So we need to make sure we hit that up right away. So we make sure we understand, we speak to that writer point of view and that writer mindset, the analytical mindset. We need to ask questions that are going to make them start thinking about it. Then at the end of this one, we give them a tactical exercise. Before we meet them, we tell them, okay, next round is round 3. I'm going to give you this tactical exercise. You have to go perform this and do this. And then we're going to come back and we're going to look at your work and what you did and how you performed. And so if it's in what I'm trying to get for the digital marketing world, it's okay, now go build this campaign. We're going to run it and structure it. We're obviously going to pay for it and everything and make sure that you're not doing anything out of pocket. And then you're going to bring it back and we're going to work through it. We're going to see, was it successful? Did it generate what we needed to generate? Did it make sense? And then how did that flow? So then we get to see the real-time work. We take that and we look at it in comparison to the other candidates. We work through that together, and then we take the best candidates who perform the tactical exercise well, or at least in the parameters that we want, and we invite them for stage 3 of the interview, which is the final interview, and where we say, okay, here's what the compensation package looks like. Here's what the bonus package looks like. Here's how this works, and we're ready to give you a conditional offer of employment if you're ready for this, or a conditional offer as a contractor, or whatever you're hiring for. And they say yes or no. And if that candidate makes it that far, generally they say yes. If not, you usually have 2 others who passed the tactical exam well, but didn't quite make it as far as you'd like them to do in terms of how well they performed. And so once you get to that point, then they take the offer. And this is where you say, okay, now that you're going to come on board, here's our next meeting. We're going to talk about your duties and responsibilities. You're going to get a handbook. These are the things you have to memorize. These are the quizzes you're going to get based off this. This is the training you need to go through. And so our next meeting after the offer of employment is basically, this is what's required of you, and this is how it's going to work. This is how it's going to move forward. Because if you don't set these contracts up front, and if you don't explain this well up front, they're going to get confused and frustrated, even if they're the best candidates in the world. So make sure when we are hiring them and we are bringing them on, we have this already set up and ready to go. We have training meetings set up. We have mentorship meetings set up. We have training guides and manuals they can memorize. And then maybe we have quizzes and information and questions we ask them based on when we say, okay, you have a week to go through the training manual. And now, okay, here's your quiz on the training manual. How did that work? Now here's your actual in-person quiz that you're going to go through. Maybe if you're in a gym, it's going through the motions of how to go through a sales conversation. And then it's going through the motions of how you get through a fundamentals program. And then it's, okay, now how do you work through a class and how do you do all these things? And we need to make sure that we introduce all the aspects of what we need to do in their training so they don't develop weaknesses anywhere down the road, and then give them the opportunities to learn and grow. So this hiring process is organized in these 3 stages. Stage 1, you just bring them on to a video conference. And one thing I do before this first meeting we do, which is usually a video meeting, if it's not, you can meet in person as well for all 3 of these. But the first one I like to do via video conference because I can make it intentionally difficult for them to get on the video call. So they have to go through a little bit of process and evaluation to figure out what's wrong, what's going on. So you send them out, okay, we're getting on a video call, and then you don't put the link in, but you send the link 15 minutes before the interview so that you can see, did they go to their email? Did they check? Did they email me asking about it? Were they trying to actively search through it, or did they just not show up? So you're going to vet out not so high quality candidates at that point right off the bat. And then step two. So step one is that first video call. Just ask those 5 questions I talked about. Just get a handle on them. Have them give you a one-sheeter on how they would do a process from the high level viewpoint. Then stage 2, okay, bring them in. Second stage, okay, now we're going to talk about that process sheet. Why did you put it together this way? What if this went wrong? What if that went wrong? What if this didn't go right? What if this did go right? Okay, now what do you do from here? And then after that one, you take that sheet and you work through with the questions about the writer point of view, and you take the responses and information from that, and you invite them to the third stage of the interview if they make it that far, where you give them that conditional offer of employment. You go through the actual tactical exam that they went through on the second process, which is, okay, now go out and do this and bring it back to me. And then let's talk about how you did it, why it went well or why it didn't go well, and what you would do to adjust and fix it next time, which leads them into the third one where you go through that. Okay, let's talk through this whole thing. And then, okay, now we're ready to accept you into our position. Here's what we do. Here's why we do it. Here's how we do it. Here's all your information you need. Here's what you have to memorize and all of that stuff. So think about it that way. It really helps if you break it up, because you force people to go through a little bit of a vetting process, give them easy assignments, and then move them into more difficult assignments as they make it through that process and as they get deeper and deeper into the process. So you vet out the not so good candidates and you bring in the really good candidates, and you can really see where people shine and where they shine both tactically and from the high level viewpoint. I hope this was helpful, you guys. This is episode 52 of my podcast. If you are looking for a position to be a digital marketing manager and want to manage some paid traffic all over the world, then shoot me an email, chandler@stoneagefield.com. We are actively recruiting for it. So I'd love to hear from some of you guys if you're looking for the help or looking to help out. Anyway, I will see you guys next week. And it's been fun. It's been real. And it's been real fun. See ya.